My mother-in-law smiled when she handed me the glass. A special birthday spritzer, she said. But what she did not know was that I had seen her slip something into it. So, I smiled back, took the tray, and quietly switched glasses hers, for her husband's. 45 minutes later, the man who always mocked me for being just a teacher was curled up in the bathroom, violently sick. And across the table, she looked at me. That is when she realized I knew. I did not confront her. I did not yell. I just sat there and let her watch everything fall apart. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who smiled in your face? Drop your story in the comments. And if you have ever been underestimated, hit that like button. This story is for you. My name is Ethan Miller. I am 58 years old. I teach English literature at a public high school just outside Providence, Rhode Island. 31 years, same district. I have coached speech teams, written college recommendation letters in the middle of the night, and bought winter coats for kids who had none. It is not glamorous, but I sleep well. I have never been a loud man, never needed to be. Some men flex their wealth, their voices, their politics. Me, I trust silence and I trust books. I trust the truth, especially when it is slow and patient. I have been a father to one. Samantha, my wife's daughter, is from a previous marriage. She was 8 when I met her, 11 when she first called me dad, and 22 when I walked her down the aisle like she had always been mine. But Samantha did not just come with paint-stained jeans and a head full of dreams. She came with her grandmother, Helena Bauer. Have you ever met someone whose voice is soft, but their words always manage to cut? That is Helena. Not cruel, not in the obvious ways. She never raised her voice, never cursed, but she wielded presence the way most people wield weapons. Helena did not hate me outright. That would have been easier. No, she did something worse. She dismissed me. It was her birthday dinner that Sunday. Helena was turning 74 and Samantha, ever the peacemaker, insisted we go. She is making an effort, Samantha said in the car. Can we just show up and be kind? I nodded, not because I believed it, but because I loved Samantha. I wore the gray button-down she gave me for Father's Day. I shaved, bought an overpriced bottle of wine that I knew Helena would call cute, and we arrived at the Bauer house at 6:10 p.m. The lawn was perfect, the porch light already on. Helena opened the door wearing pearls like always, and that expression that was somewhere between a smirk and a sermon. Ethan, she said, brushing the air near my cheek. Glad you could join us. Her husband, Gerhard, stood behind her with a glass of scotch and a hand expression, flat as ever. I stepped inside. The table was set for 8. Gleaming silverware, cloth napkins folded into origami fans, the kind of dinner that screams intention. Samantha took her usual spot at the end of the table. I sat diagonally across from Gerhard, same place I always sat, just under that oil painting of Helena's father, General Otto Bauer. The general stared down at me like he always had, eyes locked, jaw clenched. Dinner began like any other Bauer dinner. Helena talked about her latest charity project, the garden club, and a bridge tournament she hosted. Gerhard complained about lazy city council people and read stock updates from his phone. I smiled, nodded, and passed the salt. Then came the drinks. Oh, Helena said, rising from her chair. I almost forgot I made something special. My birthday blend. She disappeared into the kitchen. When she returned, she was carrying a silver tray, 8 glasses arranged neatly, but 2 were separated slightly from the rest. I watched as she lingered over one glass in particular. Her hand moved quickly beneath the tray. She adjusted the angle, then smiled. This one, she said, turning toward me, is for you. She placed it in front of me with a satisfied elegance. The drink looked harmless, fizzy, citrusy, a hint of green, but there was a shimmer on the surface, faint, too faint for most to see, but I had seen it before. In a different life, when a student once slipped Xanax into a bottle at a party and swore it was Gatorade, I had driven him to the ER myself. I looked at Helena. She did not blink. I stood up. Let me help you with the others, I said. She hesitated. Ethan, I have got it. I insist. I took the tray. As I turned toward the table, I made the switch. My glass, the special one, now sat at Gerhard's place. We toasted. Samantha raised her glass to her mother. Gerhard raised his to nobody in particular. I raised mine but did not drink. 45 minutes later, Gerhard was sweating, pale, eyes unfocused. "Excuse me," he muttered, rising from his chair. He did not make it to the bathroom in time. We heard the violent, unmistakable sound of retching. Samantha leapt from her seat. "Dad!" Helena followed, napkin in hand. I sat quietly. The special glass was still full in front of me, untouched. Helena returned alone a few minutes later. Her face was calm, but her eyes darted to my glass, then to me. She understood, and I knew she understood. Dinner ended tensely. I offered to help with the dishes, but Helena refused. Samantha kissed her on the cheek and promised to call the next day. In the car, Samantha said quietly, "That was strange. Your father was sick." "Maybe food poisoning," I said. "Maybe." We drove home in silence. That night, after Samantha was asleep, I went down to the garage. I took the glass Helena had made for me, wrapped it in a towel, and put it in an old lunchbox that hadn't been touched in years. Then I texted a person I hadn't spoken to since high school. Lucas Schneider, my former student, a smart guy, now worked at a private toxicology lab in Bridgeport. I was brief. "Ethan Miller, are you still doing chemical analysis?" "Yes." "Wow, Mr. Miller, what happened? I need to check one thing quietly." 3 days later, I had the results. Lorazepam dissolved in alcohol. Not a lethal dose, but enough to throw a person off track. Slurring their speech, making them look drunk or disoriented. Enough to make them look unstable. I held the report in my hands for a long time. She didn't want to kill me. That would be too obvious. She wanted something else. To remove me from the opening of Samantha's gallery the next morning, to erase me from family dinners, to push me out of their history. Helena Bauer was trying to write me off, not through emotion but through strategy. But she made one mistake. She underestimated a man who built his life on small, quiet decisions. Helena knew how to wage war without weapons, how to discredit without even saying a word, how to leave a bruise with her gaze that no one else could see. She didn't believe in conflict, only in control. That made her dangerous. But what she hadn't counted on was that I no longer sought her approval. The game was up. She wanted to humiliate me, not in public but in a targeted, surgical way. She wanted me to miss Samantha's speech on Monday, when donors and journalists would gather to hear about the person who inspired her, me. In her script, I was supposed to be absent, and she was supposed to look worried. Samantha would be disappointed, and over time, doubt would grow in her. And one day she would look at me the way her grandmother always did. But Helena had miscalculated. I had seen this drawing before. Over the next few days, I went over every little thing, not out of hatred but as an observer. That's my strength. I see, I notice, I remember. I remembered the first time she'd called me temporary at the Christmas table. How she'd accidentally cut me off in family photos. How she'd introduced me at a charity event not as Samantha's father but as Elaine's other husband. And those little hints. "Samantha, don't you think Ethan's job is exhausting for his age? Maybe you too should see a counselor. Sometimes men just disappear." Each time it had seemed like a small thing, 100 little cuts. And now I saw it was a pattern. I started digging. Not out of rage, but out of professional habit. I checked thousands of student papers, caught plagiarism. I know when something doesn't add up. I started with her medication. Helena kept her pills in the same white lacquered cabinet next to the refrigerator. She never hid them. On the contrary, she liked to shake the bottle for everyone to hear. I remembered taking her to the pharmacy a few years ago when Gerhard was away on business. She had said out loud that she needed a backup doctor who understood her better. I remembered that phrase. I picked up the information from the bottle I had once helped deliver. Her full name, the dosage, the doctor's name. Now I checked it, and another and another. 3 different doctors, 3 prescriptions, all for lorazepam or its analogs. And 3 different pharmacies in 2 counties. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was intentional. She wasn't just taking the medication. She was building up a reserve of power. I kept my distance from Samantha in those days. Not because I was angry, no. And because he knew. She had to see it with her own eyes. Because people like Helena had a gift. They didn't just control history, they wrote it in advance. They painted your image in other people's minds so that no one could tell where the truth was. And Samantha loved her grandmother. Their bond was complex. Guilt, gratitude, pain, all woven into one knot. I knew from the start, cutting straight at her with accusations would never work. People like her do not break that way. What I needed was a mirror, something that would reflect her own games back at her. The first crack in her armor came from someone I had not spoken to in years. Clara Vogel. She had worked in Helena's house as a maid, a quiet woman in her early 40s, raising 3 children on her own. For years ago, she was dismissed, accused of stealing a brooch, a piece of jewelry that, conveniently, Helena later claimed had turned up in a drawer. I found Clara on Facebook. She was running a small catering business. I sent a short, polite message. Clara, this is Ethan Miller. I used to teach your son English. I am married to Samantha's mother, which makes me Helena Bauer's son-in-law. I believe you were wronged, and I think I've just been through something very similar. If you're willing to talk, I'd be grateful. Her reply came within the hour. You're not the first she's tried to erase. I'll call you. That call changed everything. Clara told me about the games. How Helena would give her one set of instructions and then tell Gerhard something entirely different, only to publicly shame Clara for incompetence. How she once switched labels on wine bottles, making sure the wrong one was served, just so Clara would be humiliated in front of guests. And then there was the tea. 15 minutes after drinking it, Clara felt dizzy, sweating, her words slurring. She slipped away before anyone noticed. Later, Helena spread the story that the maid reeked of alcohol. She does it so carefully you can never prove it, Clara said. She makes people disappear without ever laying a hand on them. I asked if she had anything concrete, messages, notes, photos. She said, not me, but someone else might. The next day, a manila envelope appeared on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a thumb drive, one file, a video, Helena in her kitchen 2 nights earlier. My glass on the counter. Her hand, the small vial. No audio, just the image. But it was enough. And then I noticed her eyes, the way she glanced over her shoulder, not once but twice. She wasn't panicked. She was calculating. Another clip followed. This one from the hallway camera. Gerhard doubled over, clutching his stomach. Helena steadying him, whispering, "You weren't supposed to drink that." He groaned. "What the hell did you do, Helena?" Her voice was cold. He was getting too comfortable. He always gets too comfortable. "You're losing it." "No. I'm reminding everyone who's in charge." I sat in my study for hours, not thinking about revenge, not even justice, just clarity. She wasn't sick. She wasn't careless. She was exact. And I realized she had rehearsed this on others for years. Small humiliations, subtle erasures, calculated disappearances from family conversations. This was never only about me. It was always about control. The final piece came from Samantha, without her even knowing it. She walked into my office one evening, laptop in hand. "Grandma wants you to take her photo for the charity board's website." "She asked for me?" I said. Samantha nodded. "She said you're the best with natural light." I kept my face neutral. Saturday. That Saturday morning, I arrived alone at the Bauer house. Helena greeted me with her usual mask of civility. "You're early," she said. "Better for lighting," I replied. I set up my camera, positioned the chair, adjusted the background. Then I pulled a sealed envelope from my bag and handed it to her. Inside, the lab report, still frames from the video, the transcript of her whisper to Gerhard, and typed records of her overlapping prescriptions from 3 different doctors. Her hands trembled as she unfolded each page. "This is absurd," she tried to say smoothly. "I would never." "We both know what you did," I answered quietly. Her face hardened. You were never good enough for her, she said coldly. You never will be. Then why not just tell her that? I asked. Why the pills? Her tone sharpened. Because men like you don't respond to honesty. You only respond to consequences. I stood. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to give you a choice. Her eyes narrowed. You're going to tell Gerhard what you did. You're going to back off. Permanently. No more lies, no more manipulation. You'll treat Samantha like the adult woman she is, and me like the father she chose. She sneered. And if I don't? I set a flash drive on the table. Then this goes public. 7 copies. 1 for Gerhard, 1 for Samantha, 1 for the gallery director, 1 for the charity board, 1 for your garden club, 1 for your church. And the 7th? I smiled faintly. That one's for you, so you never forget. People like Helena don't implode in an explosion. They unravel slowly, thread by thread, so quietly no one notices. Especially those closest to them. After that confrontation in her sunroom, she didn't scream, didn't throw me out, didn't demand the drive back. She just sat there, and that silence told me more than words ever could. She sat there motionless, her fingers resting lightly on the envelope as if afraid it might spring open on its own. When I walked out, I did not slam the door, and I did not look back. That battle was finished. But another one had already begun. And this one would unfold quietly inside Samantha's heart. It started 3 days later. I was in the laundry room when Samantha walked in holding a thick, leather-bound photo album. One of those heavy ones her grandmother always kept under the staircase shelf. She looked unsettled. I was searching for baby pictures, she said. For that slideshow my friend Rachel is putting together for the gallery fundraiser. I wanted to include one with you in it. She sat on the step, opening the album across her lap. But I cannot find any. I frowned. What do you mean? I mean, she said slowly. I have gone through 2 entire albums already. Birthdays, Christmas, school plays, grandma's garden parties, and you're just not there. I stayed silent, because I had noticed the same thing years ago. She turned to a Christmas page. Samantha was 10, wearing a red velvet dress. Anna stood behind her, smiling. Helena posed near the tree. On the far left, the frame was cropped tightly, leaving an empty gap. That was the year you gave me that leather journal, Samantha whispered. The one with the brass buckle. I wrote in it every night for 2 years. I remember you were standing right next to me when Mom took this picture. I nodded quietly. I was. She didn't speak for a while, then softly asked, why would she? She let the question fade. She didn't have to finish it. Over the following week, Samantha grew quieter. Not withdrawn, but her thoughts seemed to run deeper, like a radio station tuned a little lower than usual. I didn't push. I didn't guide. I just stayed steady, right where I had always been. That's the thing about truth, you can't hand it to someone like a present. They need to unwrap it themselves. And she was beginning to. One night, I found her in my study. She was sitting at my desk, scrolling through her digital photo archives from college. I thought maybe it was just the printed albums, she said. But look, she turned the laptop toward me. It was a shot of her first art exhibition sophomore year. Samantha stood beside her first oil painting. Anna smiled proudly in the frame. I remembered that night well. I had driven 8 hours through a snowstorm to be there after school. But in the photo, I was absent again. Grandma posted this one on Facebook, Samantha said, her voice quiet. She captioned it, so proud of my girls. She paused. I remember you standing just off to the side holding your coat. You were there, but you never even made it into the pictures. I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. She's been curating the story, Samantha said at last. I gave a single nod. She always has. A few days later, a package arrived. No name, no return address. Inside were old mini DV tapes, the kind you'd need special cables to play. On top, a yellow sticky note in familiar handwriting. Thought these might matter now. Clara. Clara Vogel, the former housekeeper. I hadn't told Samantha about her yet. Not until now. That evening, we set up the old player in the living room, tangled wires running across the carpet. The first tape flickered to life. A backyard barbecue, summer 2006. Samantha was 15. Anna was still alive. I was at the grill. "There you are," Samantha said, pointing. I smiled. Finally, proof that I had been there. Then the camera panned. Helena, sitting beneath a patio umbrella, wine glass in hand, called out to her granddaughter. "Sweetheart, let's take a picture. Just you and your mother." Anna looked confused. "What about Ethan?" Helena waved dismissively. "Let's keep this one classic." On the tape, teenage Samantha frowned. "He's part of the family." Helena laughed. "Of course, darling. We'll do another one later." Later never came. The second tape was worse. Thanksgiving 2009, the first year I hosted dinner. The camera was already rolling when Helena started speaking. Unaware. "You know what the problem is with men like him?" she said to someone off camera. Maybe Clara. "They mistake being useful for being valuable. He's useful, but he will never matter." On the couch beside me, Samantha sat frozen, her eyes locked on the screen. She didn't blink until the tape cut to static. She stood without a word and walked out of the room. I didn't follow. The next morning, she returned, eyes rimmed with red. In her hands was a dusty leather journal. "The one you gave me," she said quietly. "I found it in storage." She opened it and flipped to a page dated right after Anna's funeral. I remembered that time vividly. Samantha was 19 then, barely holding college and her grief together with scraps of poetry and late nights. She read from the old journal aloud, her voice trembling. "I do not really know what a father is supposed to feel like. But tonight, when I came home and found fresh towels folded on my bed and a little note from Ethan that said, 'I am here when you are ready,' I realized I did not need to wonder. I already had one." She closed the book slowly. "I do not know why I forgot that," she whispered. "Why did I let her twist it?" "Because she is very good at twisting things," I told her. "Especially the truth." Samantha sat down beside me on the couch. "I need to ask you something. Anything." She hesitated, took a breath. "That night, at her birthday dinner, you switched the glasses, didn't you?" I looked her in the eyes, steady and calm. "I did." She nodded once. "I thought so." Later that same day, Samantha called Helena. I did not ask what was said. I only knew the call lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, she walked out to the porch, sat next to me, and handed me her phone. "Read this," she said. It was a text from Helena, the last in a thread of 10. Each one was cold, evasive, dismissive. But the final message read, "You have always been too forgiving. That is your mother in you. He is manipulating you, and one day you will understand." I gave the phone back. "She still thinks she can write the ending," Samantha said. "But the difference is, I am not the same girl anymore." She stared out across the yard. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "She never needed to like you. She just could not stand that I loved you." I did not answer. I just reached over and held her hand. Sometimes silence tells the deepest truth. Here is what I have learned. The moment truth is spoken aloud, people start to take sides. And those who have lived in the shadows, doubting if they would ever be believed, begin to whisper. Some in hushed tones, some urgently, but always with relief. That week, the house felt unusually still. Samantha hardly touched her sketch pads. She stopped playing her jazz records in the mornings. She moved carefully, like someone balancing a truth too heavy to carry with one hand. I gave her space. I made tea. I listened, and the world began to answer back. It started with a letter, left in our mailbox without postage. Heavy paper, pressed black ink. The envelope marked only, "For Ethan. It is time." Inside was a note on stationery from St. Gabriel's Foundation for Arts and Literacy, the charity board Helena had chaired for over a decade. I knew something was wrong when she tried to strike your name from the annual report without consulting anyone. She said you were unreliable, misaligned with the family's image. But I remembered how you used to run those summer workshops for us. Quiet, generous. You made my daughter believe she could write. That mattered to me. I did not know how to speak then. I do now. Sabine Kraus. I had not seen Sabine in more than 10 years. She had been one of the volunteer parents, her daughter in Samantha's class. I remembered her clearly. Firm handshake, warm eyes, always the one who stayed late to clean up. She had attached meeting minutes, a record of Helena urging the board to cut ties with me for erratic behavior and disciplinary issues, none of which had ever happened. My pulse did not quicken. Instead, it sank. Because the more truth emerged, the more I realized this was never about one poisoned glass. It was about a system Helena had perfected, a method for erasing anyone she could not control. That afternoon, I received an email from Clara Vogel, the former housekeeper who had sent me the tapes. The subject line read, "There's someone else you need to talk to." The body of the email was short. A name, a phone number, and one sentence. She was engaged to Samantha before Anna passed away. At first, I thought Clara had made a mistake. Samantha was never engaged before Daniel, the painter she dated after college. But Clara was not wrong. I dialed the number. It rang 6 times before a man answered. "This is Marcus Steiner." Cleared my throat. "Marcus, my name is Ethan Miller. You do not know me, but you once knew my daughter, Samantha Bauer." Silence followed, then a cautious reply. "I have not heard that name in years. We met at a small coffee shop near Boston." He was in his early 40s now, glasses and a cardigan, the kind of man who instinctively holds the door open even for strangers. Nervous, yes, but not fearful. More like someone who had built a new life and wasn't sure whether to let the past back in. He looked at me across the cafe table, hands tightening around his mug. "I never thought anyone would ask me about that time," Marcus Steiner said quietly. We sat by the window. He took a slow sip, then continued. "I loved her. We were going to marry. We even had the venue booked. Then out of nowhere, she cut me off. Said she couldn't trust me anymore. Accused me of lying." His voice strained. But I hadn't. I stayed silent, letting him speak. "It was her grandmother," he said finally. "Helena showed her an email, claimed it was from me, said I'd been cheating while she was overseas. It wasn't real, but it looked real." "Do you still have it?" I asked. He nodded. "I kept everything." That night, he forwarded the evidence. The email was flawless on the surface, dates matched, the signature line perfect. But 2 things gave it away. The address wasn't his, just 1 letter off, and the IP trace linked directly back to Bauer and Company. Holdings, Helena's company. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen, fist still, jaw tight. The same pattern, only more sophisticated. She hadn't just erased people from photographs. She'd erased them from actual lives. And Samantha never even knew she had once been engaged. I printed it all. The fake email, the server trace, and an old screenshot of Samantha and Marcus on campus. Arms around each other, young and bright, happy. I slid everything into a manila folder labeled, "Things Taken." Later that week, Samantha was in the garage painting. Since the tapes, she had grown quieter, but I noticed her sketches of Helena had shifted. Less form, more shadow, eyes that seemed cold, smiles that never quite formed. I walked over and handed her the folder. Said nothing. She opened it slowly. The color drained from her face. "This is Marcus," she whispered. She looked up at me, eyes clouded. I was engaged?" I nodded. "You were," I said. "I don't remember." Her breath caught. "I was told not to." Her throat tightened. She didn't cry, but her voice broke. "I don't even know what's mine anymore. Which memories are real? Which ones she edited out? Which ones I threw away because she told me to?" I didn't interrupt. She kept turning the pages, the forged email, the digital fingerprints, all of it. The evidence of a truth that had been scrubbed, rewritten, rebuilt. Finally, she whispered, "She's been at this for decades." I placed my hand over hers. "And yet you still know who you are, who you became despite it." That night, Samantha did something I didn't expect. She called Owen, her cousin, Helena's only grandson, the golden boy who'd always lived in her story. Her voice was calm. I need you and Vanessa to come to dinner on Sunday, she said. There's something you need to see. It's time. Sunday came. Vanessa arrived first, hugging Samantha tightly, folder in hand. Then she looked at me and gave a small nod. Owen followed, stiff, hesitant, scanning the room like the walls might close in. We pressed play. The same recordings. Helena slipping something into my glass. The argument in the hallway. When it ended, Owen leaned back. That could be edited. Samantha turned on him. Owen, stop. Look at me. She pointed to the frame. That is our grandmother. This is what she did. What she has been doing. It's all right there. She wouldn't, he started. But Vanessa cut him off. She did. To me too. Owen froze. What? Vanessa reached into her bag and pulled out a handwritten note. She slipped this into my purse 2 years ago. Pretended it was an accident. She handed it over. Owen read aloud. You will never be enough. Not for this family. Not for Owen. Not for the future we planned. His hands shook. I didn't know. Vanessa wiped a tear. You weren't supposed to. That night, after they left, Samantha sat across from me in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea she hadn't touched. She tried to poison you, she whispered, and you still didn't destroy her. No, I said, because this was never about revenge. It's about truth. Samantha nodded slowly. I'm ready now, she said, to face her. I reached across the table, took her hand. And I'll be right beside you. We weren't walking into that house to make a scene. We were walking in to reclaim something. Not apologies. Not vengeance. Just truth. The kind buried for decades beneath porcelain smiles and carefully manicured lies. And Samantha wanted it to happen at Helena's house. On her terms. No drama. No audience. Just the three of us sitting in the same polished living room where Helena had spent decades perfecting her role as the gracious matriarch. But this time, the stage lights had shifted, and her mask was not going to survive it. It was late Sunday afternoon when we parked outside the Bauer house. The hydrangeas out front were still in bloom, unnaturally vivid. The lawn clipped so neatly it could have passed for a country club fairway. From the street it was flawless. But perfection has a sound, and inside that house the silence was the giveaway. Helena opened the door wearing pearls and a linen blouse the shade of aged champagne. Her face flickered between confusion and control. I was not expecting you, she told Samantha. You should have called first. Samantha held up the flash drive. I think you were expecting us. You just hoped we would not show up. Helena's eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside. Come in. We sat in the formal sitting room. Daniel was not home. No tea was offered. The air itself felt tight. Samantha wasted no time. There's something you need to watch. She plugged the flash drive into the television. The hallway footage played. No commentary. Just Helena's own voice, her intent caught on film. She did not flinch. Legs crossed. She watched like a stranger to her own betrayal. When the video ended, Samantha clicked off the screen. Silence stretched. At last, Helena spoke. So that's what this is, your little production. How very ironic. Samantha stared at her. I loved you, she said softly. I trusted you more than anyone, and you took that trust and twisted it. You made me believe things that weren't true about Ethan, about Marcus, about myself. Helena's gaze shifted slightly, like gears recalibrating behind her eyes. You were vulnerable. You needed direction. Samantha's tone sharpened. No, I needed honesty. And you gave me manipulation wrapped up as protection. Slowly, Helena rose to her feet. I kept this family from splintering, she snapped. When your mother died, I was the one who held it together. I paid the tuition, I handled the estate, I kept order. Right down to controlling who I loved, what I believed, and who I erased. Samantha cut in. Helena's hands shook, though she masked it by fidgeting with a ring. I was saving you from yourself. You were saving yourself from losing control, Samantha shot back. The room froze. Then Helena turned to me for the first time, her voice sharp as broken glass. And you, sitting there like some noble martyr. Do you think you have won something? I met her stare. I don't need to win. I just need Samantha to see you clearly. Her lips twitched, a hairline crack in the facade. She will forgive me, she said too quickly. She always does. Samantha stood. No, I won't. That was it. No shouting. No collapse. Just a clean break. We walked out without another word. The evening wind brushed against us as we stepped outside. Behind us, the Bower house stood just as perfect, just as hollow. Samantha didn't cry. She didn't turn back. Later, on our porch at home, we sat quietly watching dusk fall over the trees. Do you think she even believes any of it? Samantha asked. I thought for a moment. I think she believes her version of the story, and she always has. She let out a long breath. It's strange, realizing your memories aren't really yours, that someone else curated them like family photos. She glanced at me. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. You saw it when you were ready, I said. That's the only time truth ever sticks. She rested her head on my shoulder. We stayed that way a long time, just breathing, just being. 2 weeks passed. No calls, no visits. The silence felt different now. Not threatening, not uncertain, just final. Then one morning a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. The paper thick, the cursive perfect. You have always been more like your mother than I wanted to admit. And perhaps that was my greatest mistake. I hope you find peace in your illusions. I will keep mine. Helena Bower. No apology. No recognition of what she had done. Just one last defense of her own story. Samantha read it once, folded the page and set it into the fireplace. The flames curled it into ash without a sound. That night, while I was at my desk grading essays, Samantha walked in holding a small wooden box. Inside were photographs, old ones of Clara, Samantha, and me. The colors had faded, edges curled with time, but one image pulled me in. It was a candid shot of the three of us at the beach, hair wild in the wind, toes sunk in the sand, all of us laughing without posing. I developed this one back in college, Samantha said softly, but I never printed it until now. She placed it in my hand. Because this, she whispered, is real. There are 2 types of silence. The kind that rests gently between people who understand one another, and the kind that falls like a curtain after the final act, when no one in the audience knows whether to clap or stand up and leave. That second kind was the silence we carried with us the night of the dinner. It was Daniel's idea, strangely enough. He called Samantha about a week after the ashes of Helena's letter had cooled in the fireplace. Your grandmother wants to host one last family dinner, he said flatly. She's trying. Samantha looked at me as she repeated his words across the kitchen table. Trying, she muttered. She's always trying to steer, to rewrite. Still, she agreed. Not for Helena, but for closure. This time, though, we would be the ones setting the terms. Let me handle it, I told her. The order, the message, everything. Are you sure? She asked. I nodded. Absolutely. And it will be quiet, simple, and final. The evening was set. Sunday, 7 o'clock. The Bower house. Family only. The last time I had walked through those doors, I carried evidence in my pocket and left silently, alone. This time I was bringing more than documents. I was bringing her own voice, the one she could never erase. I arrived first, early enough to help arrange the table. Helena greeted me with the same polished smile, as though nothing had ever happened. Ethan, she said warmly, still prefer your roast cooked medium? I held her eyes. Still prefer it honest. Her smile faltered, just for half a heartbeat. Samantha and Lucas arrived together. Emily followed soon after, a folder tucked discreetly under her coat. No one hugged. No small talk about the week. By the time we sat, the dining room felt less like a family meal and more like a stage waiting for its curtain to rise. Helena lifted her glass. To family, she said. To healing. The words tasted like vinegar, but I raised my glass anyway. To truth. Dinner was elegant: lamb, rosemary potatoes, some truffle dish I ignored. Conversation stayed shallow, safe. Daniel ate slowly, eyes flicking between us. Then came dessert, or would have if I hadn't spoken first. Before we wrap up this evening, I said, there's something I want us all to see. From beneath the table, I lifted a small black case, opened it, and pulled out a projector. Helena's eyes narrowed. What is this? A tribute? A tribute to stories, I said. The ones we share, and the ones we bury. I clicked the remote. The projector lit the cream wall near her china cabinet. First, a still from the hallway camera. Helena's hand, the vial, her glance over her shoulder. Gasps filled the table. Then came the hallway footage. Daniel clutching his stomach, Helena's whisper. You weren't supposed to drink that. Daniel's fork froze midway to his mouth. Then came short clips, voices spliced together, women speaking quietly. She said I wasn't good enough for the family's image. That if I loved Lucas, I should step away quietly. I was told I had a drinking problem. I've been sober for 14 years. The transitions were soft. No dramatics, just clarity, just evidence. When the last frame faded, I shut the projector off. No one reached for dessert. Helena sat motionless, hands folded neatly on the tablecloth like she was bracing for a storm she could not manipulate. Samantha broke the silence. I used to think my grandmother was protecting me, that her judgment came from wisdom. But it wasn't wisdom, it was fear. Fear that if she lost control, she would vanish. Helena's lips parted. That's not. It is. Samantha cut in. You erased people from my life. You fed me stories that weren't real, about Ethan, about Marcus, even about myself. You didn't protect me. You broke me. Helena's face twisted, anger or maybe disbelief, that the spell was finally gone. You're still young, she said bitterly. One day you'll understand what it means to protect someone from themselves. Emily spoke next. You didn't protect anyone. You punished independence. And when we refused to bend, you cut us out. Even Lucas's voice trembled as he whispered, I used to think you were proud of me. Helena turned to him, desperate. I am. He shook his head. No, you were proud of your version of me. I don't need an apology, I said. Life has taught me that people rarely pay the debts they owe. What I do have, I placed a small USB drive on the table, is everything. Every piece of it. It's yours to keep. Not as blackmail, not as punishment. As record. Helena reached for it, but I held it just a moment longer. But if you ever try to rewrite Samantha's story again, or mine, or anyone else's at this table, then this truth won't stay buried. We left before dessert. There was nothing sweet left to serve. Back home, Samantha sat on the porch, blanket around her shoulders, staring into the dark yard. Do you think she'll change? She asked quietly. I shook my head. People like Helena don't change. But they fade when no one is left to clap for them. Her breath left slow and even. And if she calls again? She asked. You'll know what to say, I told her. That night, as I shut down the house, I passed the framed photo in the hallway. Me and Samantha on the beach, hair flying, sand between our toes, laughter caught midair. A real moment, untouched. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen not by Helena, but by the only person who mattered. 3 days later, Daniel Bauer appeared on my porch without a call or warning. Just a quiet knock at 6:42 in the evening, right as the sky turned the color of worn lavender. He wore a pressed overcoat, a manila folder tucked beneath his arm, and a look I couldn't quite read. I opened the door. Daniel, I said simply. Ethan, he nodded. Got a minute? I stepped aside. We sat down in the den, the same room where I had once stayed up grading essays and where Samantha had dictated her letters to Santa word for word when she was little. Daniel's eyes scanned the shelves like he was seeing the space for the first time. Didn't think I'd end up here, he admitted after a pause. Neither did I said. He set the folder on the coffee table but didn't touch it. Instead, he leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I watched that hallway footage again, he said finally. I stayed quiet. Silence pulls more truth out of a man than questions ever will. She's always been commanding, he said. Even when we first married. Back then it felt like strength, like grace. A woman who knew her mind, who couldn't be pushed around. He gave a dry, humorless laugh. I mistook control for elegance. I thought manipulation was just confidence. He went quiet again. Finally, he opened the folder. Inside was a stack of papers, yellowed photographs, brittle letters, old newspaper clippings. After dinner, he said, I went up to the attic. First time in years. Found an old trunk she kept from before Samantha was born. Back when she worked in PR. I had almost forgotten it existed. He held up a photo. A young Helena, seated beside a woman in a wheelchair holding a microphone. Her sister, Daniel said. Isabel. She'd had a stroke. Lived with Helena for a while in her 20s. I frowned. I didn't know she had a sister. No one does, he said, because Helena never spoke of her. He passed me the photo, then unfolded a typed letter dated July 12, 1985. I'm sorry, Lena. I told them the truth about the money. About how you moved it. They asked me directly. I didn't lie. I thought we were past this. I looked up. She cut Isabel off after that, Daniel explained. She died alone in assisted living. Helena never even went to the funeral. My chest tightened. I don't think Samantha even knows she had a great-aunt. She doesn't, he said firmly. And that's not the worst of it. From the folder, he pulled out a birth certificate. Not Samantha's, Clara's. The line for father was blank. I blinked. She told me Clara's father died in Korea. A decorated veteran, discharged posthumously. That's the story she told everyone, Daniel replied. He pulled out a brittle newspaper clipping. An arrest record from 1959. Robert Hale, fraud, embezzlement, domestic assault. And at the bottom, next of kin, fiancée, Helena Bauer. Daniel's voice was flat. He wasn't a war hero. He was a con man. And I think Helena's first real wound wasn't being lied to. It was being exposed. I leaned back slowly, the pieces falling into place. The picture was clearer now, and darker than I had imagined. She's been running ever since, I said quietly. Daniel nodded, his words measured. Layer after layer, costumes, stories, personas. All of it just to cover the truth, to keep her grip. He closed the folder with deliberate care. I didn't come here to be forgiven, Ethan. I know what I did. I enabled it. I stayed quiet. I let her frame people. Asterisk, asterisk, Claire. Andrew, even you. Asterisk, asterisk, because silence is easy. It doesn't make you the villain, but it makes you disappear. His voice cracked just once before he steadied it again. And now, my own grandchildren don't look at me the same. He gestured to the folder. I wanted you to have this. Not as a weapon, but as context. I nodded. Thank you. Then he surprised me. I think I'd like to talk to someone, he said, his eyes flicking down. A professional. I didn't smirk, didn't offer a clever remark. I just nodded. That's the bravest thing you've said tonight. After he left, I sat in the den, flipping through the documents again. Each page felt like another rib from the skeleton she'd hidden for decades. But instead of triumph, I felt grief. Because truth is not a blade. It's a mirror. And when you hold it up to a legacy built on fear, you see every face that stood by, including your own. The next morning, I showed the file to Samantha. She cried. Not for herself but for her mother. And for the sister she never knew existed. She cried because the woman who raised her so perfectly had stacked that life on top of graves and silence. When the tears finally stopped, she looked at me and whispered, I want to paint her one last time, but not the woman she pretended to be. Took 2 weeks. She titled it The Matriarch. In the portrait, Helena's face was raw, unpolished, one eye swallowed by shadow. Her hands didn't rest gently. They clenched around the handle of a chess piece. I didn't ask. I already knew. At the gallery opening, no one spoke her name, but everyone understood. And when the crowd asked Samantha who had inspired the painting, she simply smiled. Some women build kingdoms. Others build cages. This is about learning the difference. Families carry stories in more ways than words, through glances at dinners, through the empty frames left on the mantel, through who gets remembered and who gets erased. After the gallery showing, the matriarch spread quicker than we expected. The whispers began. Board members, artists, cousins who had once pretended not to see the cracks. The first call came from Edith, Helena's sister-in-law. "Ethan," she said, her voice brittle, "I saw that painting. I saw what wasn't said, which in this family usually says everything. Is it true? What did she do to Andrew? To you?" I didn't answer directly. "It's not about what she did once," I told her. "It's about what she kept doing, and what we all allowed." There was a pause. Then her quiet reply, "Well, I suppose I allowed it, too." That was the first crack. More followed. A cousin in Virginia who'd been cast out because his marriage wasn't good enough. Another in Connecticut who'd quietly left the charity board 2 years ago, now sending us copies of Helena's emails warning him not to damage the family brand. Even Ryan's younger brother, Lucas, texted Samantha, "I thought you were exaggerating. I'm sorry. I was just afraid of what it would cost. You were right. Truth doesn't whisper once it lands. It echoes." Helena stayed silent, but Daniel didn't. We learned he'd started sessions with a retired therapist who once volunteered at the foundation. Not for penance, but to finally understand his part in the house of mirrors they'd lived inside. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. Then came the invitation, not from Helena, but from her niece. She was organizing the Bauer family's summer reunion in Newport. Every year it had been a performance, a staged theater of togetherness, right down to the brand of sparkling water Helena insisted on. This year the invitation looked different. "We invite every branch of the Bauer family, and every truth." At the bottom, a handwritten note. "Samantha, please come. And Ethan too. It's time the rest of us learn how to listen." We debated for 3 days. Samantha wore a groove in our living room floor pacing. The gallery walls didn't shine with flawless masterpieces. Instead, they breathed with raw honesty. Unfinished strokes, colors born from scars, stories told without polish. Alana's daughter found us near the coffee stand. Tears glimmered in her eyes. "You believed in me when no one else did," she whispered to Miranda. Miranda smiled gently. "You made yourself visible. We only turned on the light." That evening, back home, I opened my journal, untouched for months. The first line I wrote was simple. "Some legacies are inherited, but others are chosen." Margaret never understood that. Her idea of legacy was control, preserving an illusion of dignity by holding the reins. Ours became creation, making space where none existed before. And that difference is what saved Miranda and me as well. People ask if I ever forgave her. The truth? Not in the way most mean it. I didn't erase her actions, her manipulation, or the pain she caused. But I let it go. Because forgiveness isn't always about reconciling with the person. It's about healing the wound inside yourself. Years later, the notice came. Margaret had died. No tributes, no farewell, only a hospice record and her will. Even then, she made one last attempt to control, leaving Miranda a conditional inheritance. Return to the Kingston home, reclaim the board seat, uphold the family's image. Miranda refused. Instead, she donated Margaret's untouched wardrobe to a shelter for survivors of abuse. "Let someone else give these fabrics a new meaning," she said. I only nodded. Some truths don't need words. One morning, while I was planting basil, Miranda called me to the porch. In her hand was an envelope. Inside lay a dedication certificate for a new community healing arts center. At the bottom, "For Caleb Rowan, the man who proved you can rebuild what others tried to erase." I stared, speechless. "I thought this was your project," I said. She met my eyes with that quiet honesty she always carried. "It still is. But everything I built on the ground you helped me stand on." Late at night, She sometimes stays alone in her studio, not out of sorrow but gratitude. Gratitude for choosing silence over chaos, for refusing to feed the fire Margaret set, for waiting long enough that lies decayed, and truth blossomed. So I end this not with revenge, but with a beginning. Because the boldest act wasn't striking back, it was choosing to live well. Have you ever chosen quiet strength over noise? If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or betrayed, but rose above it anyway, this space is for you. Share your story in the comments. I read each one. And if this touched you, hit like, subscribe to Revenge with David. Every week we share stories of quiet power, justice found in unexpected ways, and the courage to start again on your own terms. Wherever you are, be safe, be seen, and keep walking forward with truth.